There we are, you guys. All right, you guys, welcome back to eXp Family Tree's market update, mindset, motivation. This is how we're starting out our Mondays. It's open to anyone and everyone. So as we move forward through the holiday season and after the holidays, we're going to be doing this. So mark your calendars so that you guys can join and actually join the conversation. I know a lot of you are watching live, which is great. And I think this time of the year, everybody's really busy. So jumping on a live stream might be easier, but we do hope that many of you will start to join us via Zoom. It's my Zoom link again. And we'll continue to post this in the eXp Family Tree, but it's also open to anybody that is with or not with eXp. Just invite your friends, join anybody who could get value from starting their week off this way. Thank you, Angie and Nikki and Chrissy, for joining. I'm going to let you guys take it away.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, Nikki, as usual, I would love for you to give us the update. I appreciate them so much and learn every single time. You're kind of on fire, so I'll let you start.
Awesome. Thanks, Angie. Hi, everyone. Nikki Erickson with Kevnick Group at Loan Depot. I am a mortgage loan officer, and I love to provide these updates on Mondays and help everyone learn about the market and have tools in their tool belt as realtors and points of talking in order to help clients, in order to help buyers and sellers, and really become an expert in your market from the lending standpoint as well, and to have enough knowledge to be able to share that with your clients. Two important things happening this week that are going to affect mortgage interest rates. The first one is the CPI numbers come out tomorrow. That's the Consumer Price Index. So this is the number we talk about when people say inflation is at a certain percentage. The CPI is the number that they're talking about on the media, right? As of last month, we were just above 4%. We're expecting that number to drop below 4%. If it does so, that will lead us into a more favorable meeting on Wednesday for the Fed to meet. So that's the second important thing that'll happen this week affecting mortgage interest rates, is that Fed meeting on Wednesday. As a reminder, and I say this all the time, although the Fed meeting and the interest rate that they set does not have anything to do with the interest rates that are set by the first mortgage industry, it does, however, affect the tone of the 10-year Treasury bond and how people are going to be trading and how they're going to be purchasing those 10-year Treasury bond items. Interestingly enough, as we're doing this live stream, the 10-year Treasury is on auction right now. So the auction for the 10-year Treasury is happening right now, 1 p.m. Eastern time. So that is actually taking place as we're having this conversation. What this means is that people are allowed to go in and purchase a 10-year Treasury bond, and it helps set the tone for what's going to happen on that 200-day average for the 10-year Treasury. So some very important things that are happening this week. In theory, as we talk about the inflation number coming down yet again, we got some job reports last week, which were a bit favorable, not anything super impressive, but in theory, with these things happening, the interest rates are supposed to be coming down a bit again, leading into next week. So that's, again, another great holiday present for all of us, is to have those interest rates start to push down. With that being said, on the streets is the kind of what we talk about when we talk about you guys talking to your buyers and sellers. With the interest rates going down, the number one call I've gotten last week is it time to refinance? Where are interest rates at? Should I look at refinancing my home? And as a realtor, what I always do, or as a loan officer, what I always do is when I get that question, we talk about where their interest rate is at, where their other interest rates, where the current market interest rate is at. But if there is a potential for them to benefit from a refinance, I am reaching out to the realtor that helped them in the first place and asking them to do a CMA. This can be vitally important for us as loan officers to have this information so we can help advise our clients to whether or not it's a good time for them to refinance, and help you guys as well to have that one more point of contact with your past clients. Sometimes when we look at refinancing, it's not just about interest rate. How long are they going to be in the home? What's their next goal? How much equity do they have? What's the cost to refinance? Things of that nature that are going to start to play into these conversations as interest rates start to go down again into the next year. So just a suggestion or an opportunity is to contact past clients who have purchased in the past 2 years and say, hey, we know that interest rates are coming down. Can I run a quick CMA for you? Or do you have any questions that I can answer from a value standpoint, as another touch point for your past clients, and to stay in front of them and provide relevant, good information to them as we move into this next tier of mortgage interest rates. So that's, like I said, the number one question that I got last week was that. There seems to be a lot of I don't want to use the word like panic or whatever, but a lot of encouragement happening for clients who have been sitting on the fence to say, hey, as interest rates are coming down, those home prices are going to go up. So make sure you're keeping track of that. Make sure you're advising clients on, getting in touch with their mortgage loan officer a little bit more frequently than they may have in the past in order to say, okay, where are interest rates now? What are things are happening now? How can we, improve our situation now? Just last week, I talked to a client that when I originally quoted her mortgage for the time that she was looking at homes initially, the interest rate was 7.875. And I was able to quote her last week at 6.875, which actually increased her buying power about 40 to 50,000. So that's a huge difference when it comes to a full percentage point in the improvement that we've seen on the rates.
I love that. So what I would, what I would do is circle back to you, the lender, and anyone that we worked with that hasn't moved forward, and kind of really know that number, know where you were talking interest point wise back when they maybe stopped looking or paused their search. I think that's so powerful because it's thousands and thousands and dozens of thousands of dollars of a difference that
It is.
definitely, I mean, because and I would love for you if you have any more in depth for this, but when you hear 7.87 and 6.87 and a consumer hears that coming from where we once were, that we won't go back to, hopefully, and don't want to go back to, it's so different to your ears versus their ears. So if you have any more to add to that, just to kind of how to talk to buyers or just approach it with them, being the the point difference.
Yeah. I think it's important, obviously the big tone this year throughout interest rates rising and going down now has been what has been the average interest rate over time, right? And the big talk was about, back in the 80s and, into the 90s, the interest rates are 16, 17%. And, I bought my first home and it was 9%, things of that nature. But the national average across the board is that 7% mark or just slightly above it over time, which has been interesting to see that happen, with the rising and the falling of different, economies and things of that nature, is to have that 7%. Historically, since I've been doing mortgages for 23 years, that percentage has been around the 5% mark. So just kind of keeping it relative to, what it has been and what we can expect to see in the future. Do I think we're going to see 2% again? No, absolutely not. Maybe not when I'm currently lending, but I won't say anything's not possible. But when we will, I do believe we will see 5s again at some point. We're headed into 6s, which is, healthy again. I mean, really, if you think about that, if you're out earning what the mortgage interest rate is, in other words, if your investments are earning more than what you're paying on a mortgage interest rate, things aren't so bad. If that makes sense, then it's okay. Like, we're fine. Everything's cool, because the reality is that interest is all relative to what you're doing and what appreciation you're having and what the other benefits of home ownership are. That 1% can make a huge difference. Last year we talked about make sure you're checking with your mortgage loan officer as interest rates are going up, because that's going to push down your buying power. Now we're in the happy opposite time of make sure you check with your mortgage loan officer, because as interest rates come down, your buying power increases. And that can complement the idea that, interest rates go down, home prices go up. It can complement the idea that now you can afford more home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it definitely brings the whole point up. Is I just got off a coaching call where I was talking about goal setting, and it's really about, as you're going into this next year, education, like how much are you putting aside so that you can really holistically think about this. Because I know personally, when I first got in the business, I didn't correlate the two like you just did so beautifully. And I wonder how many agents just have this tunnel vision on, and they're not thinking about the whole picture and what that means. And if you're outperforming and you have investments, I mean, you really have to take your clients and your prospects and ask the right questions. And that's not just in this lane. And I also talk about staying in your lane as a realtor, but it's having, like we talked about before, the extension of the people such as Nikki to be able to get them in contact with, to have these holistic conversations that us as agents or you as an agent might not be prepared for or know how to at a really high level. It makes the whole difference, because you can take someone that's only looking here and be like, well, what about over here? And they're like, oh, you're right. I mean, that's how so many decisions are made, especially if they're emotional. They don't have all the information. They don't have the right information. They're not educated. I encourage everyone listening to this call and the replay and on this call to really think about how you can level up. If it's not your own knowledge and your own education, finding the partners that can fill that spot for you and give the biggest bang for the buck, which is time when you send someone to someone for help.
Yeah. And it's that value proposition, right? We always want to have productive conversations and bring value to that person, whether it be on the personal side or on the business or transaction side of things as well. And if you really think about how many conversations did you have last year with potential sellers that were like, I'm not going to sell my home and give up a 3% or a 2% interest rate for a 7% or 8% interest rate. That doesn't make financial sense for me. However, those same clients that are maybe sitting in the 3% are going to be more tolerable or more willing to forego that percentage in the 6% range. Psychologically, or all the statistics and all the studies that have been done is that once that interest rate gets down into that 5.5% range, that's when the market starts to really move and people are willing to give up that lower interest rate for the 5.5% ish or right around there. That's what all the studies say. That's where all the psychology comes from. Things, for some reason, that 5.5% is that magic number. And so as we head into the sixes, you're going to be able to rehab those conversations with potential sellers. Some of them are going to be okay with it. Some of them are going to want to still wait, but it's a great way to reach out to those potential clients that you had that said, I'm not willing to give up my 2% or my 3% for a 7 or 8%. And that's true. I mean, there's some validity to that decision. Becomes less, a more opportunity, or becomes more realistic when they're seeing, interest rates down into the sixes. And so just encouraging, those reinvigorating of those conversations and restarting those conversations to say, hey, now might be a really good time for you to reconsider this, as a value call that you could make to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And did you think about that? And what about this? And ask the right questions. I love it. Absolutely. Anyone else have a question? Perfect. And you had gone back, you opened it with the CPI numbers and talked about how what is an average, or can you just dive into the people on the call or the recording that might not understand, a little bit more education around that?
Sure. So when we talk about inflation, so inflation is kind of just this like percentage, or this number that the Fed puts to how much things are costing versus how much money people have to spend. It's kind of like, how much income you have in proportion to what a home costs, or how much income you have in proportion to what products cost. Even something as simple as produce, there's numbers and figures, and how often people go on vacation is a huge indicator of these inflation numbers. Believe it or not, with the increase in Airbnb and increase in that type of traffic, and how people are vacationing has become very different in the last 3 to 4 years. Believe it or not, that vacationing number has now become increasingly more relevant to the inflation numbers as a whole than anyone ever really expected. Because if you think about it, there's income that comes to the person, to the individual, from having or owning an Airbnb, which becomes more cash flow, becomes more disposable income, increases their income amount, and affects the inflation numbers. Not so much anymore 5 to 6 years ago, but in the last 2 years, even in the last 3 months, that number, that amount of people, or number of people that are going on vacation, ironically affects inflation more than anyone thought it would. And so what inflation is, it's just that measurement of, how much are things costing relative to the income that you have? And it drills down into a bunch of really different, very specific numbers. At our highest, the inflation numbers were around 11 or 12, which drives mortgage interest rates up. As it's came down into the now 4%, and even I think they're predicting the year-over-year number at the end of the month, or from tomorrow, to be down to like 3.9%. as that pushes down, those mortgage interest rates push down, the cost of things gets cheaper, the cost of gas, the cost of produce, the cost of your eggs that were $8 earlier this year are now $4, things of that nature. So it's really just that measurement of how much things cost, and that CPI, or the consumer price index, is all that information gathered up and saying, okay, on the headline, like in other words, in the overreaching, what does that look like? And then when we drive down into the core number, is what we use to affects what the Fed does from a mortgage interest rate standpoint. As inflation gets better, the Fed numbers get better, and therefore it affects the 10-year Treasury bond. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, and from, again, I love to throw a little bit of mindset in here, and just how can you take this information and move forward through the rest of the year and into 2024, is really take 100% responsibility for understanding this and knowing this and asking the questions. I talk a lot, and more recently, and I know Chrissy on the call does as well, is showing up and doing more than you've been hired to do, or doing more than expected. And it's about really giving to give, not giving to get. And in doing that, and in showing up for your prospects or for your clients, how can you woo them and really go above and beyond and have this information and have this knowledge? And again, if you don't want to be the one that has to learn this, or you want to really, really tightly stay in your lane and keep your container tight, finding Nikki and finding other people in the industry that can help you explain this. Because I think with everything always ebbing and flowing and just so much uncertainty, the more certain we can show up with conviction and clarity and knowledge and know-how. And that's why I wanted to start these calls up again, because I think it's so very important that every week it's changing. Every week there's something that we need to know and we need to be educated about, and we need to go and bring that forward into the marketplace and into, the consumers, either their prospect, customer, past client, part of our sphere. They need to know this, or we at least have the education and we have the know-how to either speak to it or get them to someone if there's something there to be able to speak to it at a high level. So I love that. I appreciate you so much.
Yeah. And I am really looking forward to 2024, because I really think from an industry standpoint, it's going to be an amazing year. I think things are going to come back, exciting, and have home buyers getting back into the market and homes coming on for sale. And really, as those interest rates come down, which they're showing all signs point to yes, we're going to have a great year in 2024, and things are going to be back on track for us to continue to excel and grow all of our businesses and help each other grow as well. So I'm personally really excited about it. And I know that, after this year, there's just some really good signs that everything is going to be, look, the landscape is going to look different next year, but it's going to be in a good and positive way.
Love it. I'll take that all day long.
Exactly. We need a great year next year. So we're willing it to happen. We're putting it out.
I love it. Absolutely. All right. Anyone before we wrap up? Perfect. Well, I'd love to keep these close to 20 minutes as I can. So as usual, appreciate everyone for showing up. The recording will be on my YouTube channel, and I'll send it to you ladies as well if you want to include it or send it out to anyone you know. Everyone should have this information. So encourage, again, any agent is welcome from anywhere, anyhow, any number of years in the industry. It's all relevant and necessary. So thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thanks, ladies.
Bye.
Bye.